People have given their significant others another chance after getting cheated on. How's your relationship now? First time she cheated on me and I caught her, she cried and begged and I didn't break up with her. It took a while to trust her again. Moved to Korea together from South Africa, lived here for 2 years. She went to visit her sister who was also in Korea and had to stay behind and work. Months later, I get home and she's on the bed crying, saying she can't lie anymore. She cheated on me while she was visiting her sister. She feels terrible. Please forgive her. I do. I finished working in Korea. She wants to travel Central and South America before moving back to South Africa to study some more. I spent a year backpacking from northern Mexico to the southern tip of South America. When we get back to South Africa, I struggle to find work because there's no work in South Africa. I freelance as an environmental impact assessment contractor. Work is not steady. I end up having to go to very remote parts of the country to try to keep making some money in between the periods of no work. I get back from the middle of nowhere. I walk into the door. She says we need to talk. She asks me to leave and go to my parents. I'm shattered. We were meant to be forever. I go to my folks. We break up officially about a week later. I spent 6 months living with my parents in a terrible state of depression. I guest lecture at universities, but I'm drinking a lot and don't care. I decided to move back to Korea. Dad and Mom agree that it's a good idea. I move back. I still speak with her a bit. She then says we shouldn't be friends on Facebook and we need to take time not talking to each other. I agree. She emailed me a few months later saying she feels guilty and doesn't want to lie anymore. She had been dating one of my best friends since I basically walked out the door to go home to my folks. I say, all I ever wanted was for you to be happy, and if it couldn't be with me, I hope you can be with him. Never speak to her again. I've been back in Korea for 3 years now and got married just over 6 months ago. I'm so thankful for the 6 months I got to spend with my mom and dad. My dad passed away 3 months ago, and my mom said that those 6 months really made my dad happy to know me as a grown man and not a boy anymore. She tries to contact me. She and my best friend have broken up. I never reply. Well, at least she's consistent. Story 2. Locked in on him towards the end of a session with his ex in December of 2011. I can still smell the subtle sense. Being the naive, crazy-in-love fool that I was, I gave him another chance. It was my first. And it was perhaps because of this that I thought our connection was karmic. I felt like I knew him in a past lifetime, and surely that feeling doesn't come by often, so of course you have to salvage this, right? He couldn't let go of her, though, as I found out after everything happened. In May 2012, he skipped out on a trip with me to stay home. We were both living in our college town, and he decided to go to EDC and then go back to his hometown instead of meeting me back at our town. And I found out later it's because he was spending time with her. But at the time, I make the trip alone, and we spend my entire trip just talking on the phone and texting as he apologizes and airs his woe is me grievances to me about how he's so scared of how much he loves me. He's afraid to get hurt. I still couldn't let go of him despite the transparency of his BS, because I was just that weak and blind. July of 2012. We were still together, but on the rocks. Didn't know he was seeing or talking to his ex at this point. Apart from the December incident, I thought communication with his ex was done. Although I had suspicions here and there that he was quickly able to cover for, I get a termination for both our sake. His words, but I would have elected for the termination my own anyway. I just don't like that he made it seem like it was his idea or decision first. That was 2 days before my birthday. A week after the termination, he breaks up with me, leaving me alone in my emotional distress over the procedure, when I needed him the most. I was pro-life before it happened to me, and having to do something that went against my beliefs made me feel so torn and dissonant. Funny how just one direct experience changes your stances, but I digress. Found out he moved in with aforementioned ex in the beginning of 2013. Found out from mutual friends that he cheated on her with a coworker. Some people just never change. December of 2013, he tried to act like nothing happened between us, and he texts me saying Merry Christmas. At this point, I had actually dated and broken up with another guy that I was working to get over. We kind of tried being friends, meeting up to just hang out. Yes, just platonic hanging out, maybe once a month. During these hangouts, I was very blunt with him and straight up asked him if he was talking to or cheating on me with his ex on this or that occasion. And so I found out about the aforementioned after-the-fact revelations, that the time I walked in on him wasn't a one-time thing. I started dating a wonderful guy in December of 2014, and suddenly, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with my ex anymore. He's texted me nonsense and memes and random nights. I haven't responded. It's gratifying to realize that the guy I thought I would never get over in my entire life is now on the other end, anxious about getting a reply back from me when I couldn't care less about him. I've yet to respond to any of his messages anymore since March of this year, and I don't plan on it. Whenever he does contact me, my current significant other always knows about it, and we just laugh at how stupid or pathetic he is. I think I was honestly traumatized by walking in on him with his ex, because I have legitimate panic attacks and flashbacks to the smells and sights of walking in on him. And I still have trust issues with my current SO despite him being wonderful to me. It's more like I can't trust myself and my judgment of character. I thought my ex was so sincere and amazing, and he cheated on me multiple times. So why can't my current sincere and amazing significant other? This is my train of thought, if that makes sense. I get surges of hatred for my ex sometimes if something reminds me of him, even in the slightest. I go into jittery panics whenever my current significant other does or says something that my ex did to cover up his affair. Sorry, I was doing homework. I have to meet with my group for a project, and even I have to work tonight. I just know how easy it was for my ex to cheat. I was actually helping him cheat towards the end, since I somehow became the other woman. I inadvertently found out he was cheating with his ex again, and I found out so unceremoniously that I still couldn't find it in me to leave. He was just so careless about the way he admitted to seeing her that I thought I was supposed to be okay with it, given how dismissively he said it. Like, oh, yeah, I'm with her. It was so unapologetic and without remorse. And I was all sorts of stupid and confused. Damn you, 3 years ago me. This made me very jaded and cynical to the point where I think, 1, I'm just the kind of girl you cheat on. Number 2, I can't trust my own judgment, because if I trusted X and X cheated on me, then if I trust Z, why can't Z cheat on me? And 3, even the best of people are susceptible to infidelity. Not based on my experience alone, but other situations I've heard of. Story 3. A lot of my friends know my actual Reddit account, so naturally I made this. I try and speak to this from the opposite angle. I've been married for 3 to 4 years now, but that chapter of my life is coming to a close. It's entirely my fault. At the start of our marriage, I messed up, pretty bad. I cheated on this woman 3 times. It's terrible, I know, and I really don't like to talk about it. At the time, I was the sort of person who enjoyed the game of manipulating people. How far could I take this? How many lies could I tell that they believe? Could I make this woman, with a boyfriend of her own, want me? A married man? That's all it was to me. I was stupid and selfish beyond all reason. Easily the worst I've ever been as a person. I don't think I could get lower than I was. For the first 2 instances, while I did feel some sort of pain at getting caught, I continued. The third, though, it was the final one. Something about the way she reacted or how it all went down was different. I loved her before, during and after, in my own way. I know a lot of people would readily dismiss that as false. How can you love someone and do that to them? It's hard to explain, really. Unless you've been in a pit that dark, it's hard to understand. I tell myself no more, but that was it. I couldn't hurt her again and expect her to stay. And twice, those empty promises to myself fell through. All 3 of those incidents transpired within the first 6 months to 1 year of the marriage. I convinced her to give me one final chance. I could change and she wouldn't regret it. She was so kind, so loving, and her feelings for me were strong enough that despite every fiber of her being telling her to boot me, she gave me one final chance. I spent the next 3 years struggling to change, doing everything I could to be a good husband with what I could provide and make up for what I did. However, the relationship wasn't perfect, even with my newfound character. Scars like that go so deep, aren't something you can just expect to be forgiven over. Not really. As time went on, it became clear that she would never trust me again. Part of me, for a time, conceded that this was my retribution, that in exchange for my past, for the damage I dealt, I'd have to spend the rest of my life being doubted and having every step scrutinized. Though the more we argued, the more I had to assure her that I wasn't doing anything. The more difficult it was to maintain a stance. Every woman I knew was a witch. Every friend I had was suspect. Every action or stance I took in an attempt to protect myself or lie or choose friends over their marriage. We had a lot of good moments. She made me the person I am today. She evened out my temper, saved me from the world I was in. The walls I built around myself to justify my worthlessness. She saved me. Despite that, despite knowing I had changed and acknowledging my changes, she couldn't trust me. In moments of clarity and when we were in a good mood, getting along, she'd compliment me. She'd tell me she was proud of me, and looking back, I want to cry with how good that made me feel. Yet then there were times I'd come home late or stay up too late with my friends playing games, online or at their house, and the accusations would fly. The hug was as good as a written confession that I'd slept with a woman. There was nothing I could do to rationalize it. Again, I struggled through this. I accepted it as my penance. In times of silence, though, alone, I'd dwell on what this would mean. How long would this continue? What if it never stopped? What if we fought forever? Should I only have male friends to make up for this? When she tried to ignore the fear in her heart, dismiss it as irrational, it would build up and overwhelm her. The stress would cause her to explode, even though through it all, a part of her knew I wasn't who I was. I was with all these questions in mind, not owning a house of her own yet and having no children. I sat down one night and thought for hours. On my own, should we stay together? Can I make her happy? Is this relationship healthy for either of us? I decided it wasn't and approached her with the idea of divorce. It wasn't pretty at first, but with time she came to see my point. Our divorce was very amiable. That portion of the story is uneventful. Today, I still miss her. I think of her and smile, then cry and do my best to roll back over and fall asleep. I have to be strong, though. This was the future I prepared for myself. I'll never be able to really understand what my thoughts were when I look back and how I acted before. I regret it with all my heart and soul. I hate the me for those years ago for costing me a woman I know, without a doubt, loved me as pure as she could. I damaged her. I broke a part of her heart that made her beautiful and special. If nothing else, through effort and change and love, I was able to fix that part of her as best I could. She trusted me with her heart and I betrayed her more than once. In the wake of that damage, she wasn't able to trust anyone as she used to. Over the years, that part returned. She can trust others again, but she'll never trust me. And that's entirely my fault. I can't speak for every cheater out there, but I regret everything about it. None of it was worth it. I hate to imagine where it would have been, who I'd be today if she hadn't given years of her life to fixing me in the hopes that we could work. I'll always love her, and owe her a debt I'll never be good enough to pay. Just wanted to share that side of it. Story 4. My girlfriend since high school. We were in college at the time, made out with a guy in Mexico. The next day she called me long distance, crying and told me everything. She got intoxicated, they were dancing at a club and she made a stupid mistake. At the time we broke up. I was so angry I just broke up with her on the spot. I was in a parking lot in Nashville with long distance calling card breaking up with my girlfriend. It took a little bit for me to realize, strangely, what an awesome person she was for confessing. I later learned that all of her friends there tried to talk her out of calling me and confessing, but she called me anyway. They'd been dating for 3 years at the time, so it hurt. After college, I moved to Chile for 4 years. We kept in touch. I moved back to the US because I had a chance of getting back together with her. We've been married for over a year now and have an 8-month-old daughter. She's the best thing that has ever happened to me. Story 5. He took a year off drinking and is now able to have a night where he has a couple drinks and it doesn't escalate to getting blackout like he was when he did shady crap. He worked his back off to be a better person in general. It wasn't just for me. It was for him and his future, which I think made the biggest difference. He worked intensely on our communication. I grew up very emotionally closed and we didn't communicate well at all as a result. 6 years later, we're 1,000 times happier than we were before he cheated. It brought us closer. That being said, I was typically the one to say cheating is a 100% deal breaker. I understand my experience is unique to this situation and not everyone has such results. Story 6. Our relationship is great now. It's been over 4 years since the cheating, and what I think really made it work was me getting my own apartment in a crappy unit and him seeing it, and about half my stuff was moved in. It really hit him hard, but this was where we were. He said he absolutely did not want his girlfriend and son living in an apartment. He wanted better for us and vowed to change 100%, and he did. Overall, we've been together 13 years and have been engaged for the past few years. No big rush on getting married. We're just happy with the way things are now. I trust him 100% and he trusts me as well. I let him go out lots where my friends can't understand that. I tell them that if he wants to cheat, he will find a way, and I trust that he won't. I'm no longer leashing anyone. If they want to risk it, they know the consequences. But yes, I've come a long way. I'm not sure if I'm more impressed by her forgiveness or her ability to spot a crappy apartment. Story 7. My boyfriend and I dated 6 years ago for 2 years. We were apart for 2 years and we have been back together 2 years again. We have a son. We dated before we were both young and had suspicions that he was cheating, but I actually just had it confirmed 2 weeks ago. I confronted him and, unlike before, I didn't ask but said, I know you did and I need closure. Talking about it with him surprisingly felt better, and I honestly don't think he has messed around this time. It's just hard to shake the feeling that I wasn't enough and that I may not be still. Especially now with all the self-esteem issues that come with being a new mom and physical changes and losing so many friends who aren't able to relate to my lifestyle anymore. Story 8. Toxic. We were engaged when he cheated. We're not now. He's manipulative and has control over everything I do. For example, if I don't text him back immediately, He assumes I'm somewhere I shouldn't be. If my phone goes off and I'm with him, he asks who it was and what they said. If I try to reason with him for the sake of my privacy, he turns it into me hiding things. He's scared I will cheat on him to get back at him for cheating on me. He won't take initiative to be a better person and treat me better, but also refuses to see me with someone who will. It's a roller coaster every day. I've tried so hard to move past what he did and make something work, but I can feel myself slipping away. I just want to be myself again. I want to be able to give myself to someone the way I did for him, but for the right person. Someone who will respect me and cherish it. Sometimes life is just awful. It gets better, right? Right? Story 9. I got suspicious after I caught him going through my phone, so a few weeks later I went through his and discovered that he had. I always told myself I would never stay with someone who did that, but we had been together for so long and I loved him so much. I thought I could get past it. Every time he would stay out late or be ambiguous with where he was or who he was with, I felt suspicious. Every time we would go to the bar and someone would flirt with him, I would feel resentful and jealous. I think the worst part about it was knowing that he had been able to lie to me for so long. Have intimacy, tell me he loved me, and looking back, knowing that he knew what he had done and still kept that inside him, made me realize deep down that I could never trust him again. We continued dating, or hating each other for a few months, and eventually he dumped me. It's all really for the best because he never really cared about a relationship as much as I did, in my opinion. And I wasn't strong enough to end what should have ended the moment I found out that his thing was more in control of his actions than his head. Story 10. I'll be the exception to the rule and say it's really, really good. The trust is back. Didn't expect that to ever truly happen. We're closer than we've ever been, and our relationship and love grows every day. It was really terrible. It did, but we loved each other, recognized the mistake, and wanted to try. So we did, and it worked out. We're loving and supportive. We're not jealous or suspicious. I don't worry that she's cheating or anything of the sort. The biggest remaining negative of it is simply the stigma of a relationship in which cheating happened. If someone knows, they tend to judge the relationship for it. I can't really blame them, but it's awful because they don't know our story. Their judgment is misplaced in this case. That alone can cause damage to the relationship if someone decides they know better and try to force their views. Fortunately, I don't keep people who can't respect me, my decisions, or my relationship in my life. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 11. Man, I remember when I found out she was cheating. The searing pain of regret. Feeling absolutely betrayed and ashamed of myself. I spent a long time blaming myself. I wasn't good enough for her not to cheat on me. I felt absolutely worthless. I sat her down one day. She was all giggles and smiles when I sat her down, but I think she knew something was on my mind. What's the matter, baby? And so on. You could see her squirm. I'm sure she knew that I knew. After a few minutes of awkward silence and, look, we need to talk, I just came right out with it. By then, she was in tears. I know what you've been doing. I know all about it. I know about your cheating. No, you got it wrong, baby. It's not like that. I never cheated on you. She bawled. I can still remember the way she was so utterly destroyed on the couch. It broke my heart again. I grabbed the box and set it down on the table nearby. We discussed our relationship, where we were and where we were heading. We talked about our finances and real estate and decided that we would have another go. A fresh start, but with one very important change. From that night on, I was the banker. She hasn't cheated at Monopoly since. I guess you could say he rolled the dice on their relationship and it paid off. At least in terms of Monopoly victories. Story 12. I was on the other end of things. Was doing an internship away from home in a town with nobody my age. My boyfriend and I had been dating for about 6 months at the time. I didn't even consider taking a break, nor did I ever imagine cheating on him. I realized I'm no good on my own and ended up cheating on him with a guy from work. I told my significant other the very next day and even flew home to work things out. Throughout this time, I realized I had bigger issues at hand, i.e. suppressed feelings, father issues that I'd never even thought of before it all happened. I finished my internship and came home to move in with my boyfriend like we had planned. I went to therapy and we even did couples therapy because I never wanted anything in my life to work as much as this relationship. I was incredibly patient and understanding. Not at first, of course, but it helped that I was straightforward from the start. This was hands down the most difficult time of my life, but now I think it happened for a reason. I took our relationship for granted and now I work each and every day to keep it growing. I've gotten better at communicating what I need. In other relationships, I would have just given up. Yet neither of us would let that happen. It still hurts us both sometimes, like when anything is mentioned about cheating, but our relationship is stronger than ever. He helped me figure out why I did it and handle those feelings. I'm incredibly lucky to have found a person who is so understanding. Story 13. This couldn't be more relevant to me right now. 2 years ago, he slept with someone else. I gave him another chance. He worked on himself. Made a lot of positive changes. The past 2 years have been blissfully comfortable and loving. Found out on Sunday that his friend in California is actually a woman he's been in love with for a long time, and he left me for her on Sunday. Let's also add that he only met her in person for the first time a week ago. They're internet friends. Anyway, the moral of the story is that some people never change. Up until Sunday, I would have sworn up and down that it could happen. Forgiveness could end in a happy, lifelong relationship. Now I have my doubts. I should make it clear that he went out to visit her 2 weeks ago after reassuring me endlessly that she was just a friend, and she was happily married. But in fact, her marriage was failing, and he went out there expressly to see for himself if he wanted to leave me for her. So he lied and went behind my back, and it was infidelity. Story 14. He told me in October 2014 that he had cheated on me around November 2011 with a mutual friend. We'd been together a year at that point. They were too hammered to have intimacy, but they wanted to, and they crap-talked me the entire time. He told me all that. I said I would try to work through it. Things were relatively good at that point. Couldn't get over that, along with many other things. There were a lot of cool things about this guy, but as a boyfriend, he was just terrible. I broke up with him at the end of this summer, citing many other reasons that I'd already tried to address, and the cheating. We tried to stay friends. I told him I had started seeing somebody, my now boyfriend of like 2 weeks. Woohoo! Like 3 months after we broke up, he said he resented me and said all of my reasons were BS. The cheating in particular, because I was totally flip-flopping about the cheating thing. You're okay with it before, and no you're not? BS. You just said that to make yourself not feel bad about breaking up with me. Then he said he needed to stop talking to me for a while. Yeah, sorry. I tried to deal with it, but I realized I really don't have to deal with it, and I don't owe you that effort. We're not friends now. That reaction and looking back now at everything else in our relationship made me realize he was not the best person to me through those 5 years. He was not as respectful as he or even I thought, and while I'm sure he cared about me, looking back he did a lot of crappy things, and he'd even say stuff like, I don't know, I'm not crazier about you, which he then pretended to have not said. Lesson, don't stick with someone who's not great to you. Don't settle. You can totally do better, even if it's by staying single. I was the happiest I'd been in years within a week of breaking up. Story 15. I cheated on her after 3 years, and things had been going terrible for 6 months. I wasn't sure I cheated because she stormed out on me and gave me the silent treatment for 3 weeks. Thought we had broken up. This is how my previous relationship ended. I decided 100% that we were going to, if we had not. That night, my bud stormed into my house as I was sleeping, thinking I was gone, and was asking, Are you not alive? Hello, are you gone? I'd pretty much become a hermit at this point. He dragged my sorry, no-good out for cheer-up drinks, and a very persistent lady decided to be my rebound, which I very rudely declined until our friends forced us into bed together. I spoke to my significant other because I understood that was the point we were never going to get back together. That was a slap in the face because I was pretty much wishing it was my significant other the whole time while doing the evil deed. We met so I could clear the relationship properly and respectfully, instead of just never talking again. She had the same intention because she handed a note after which I had pretty much everything I said to her. I decided I couldn't tell her immediately about sleeping with someone. I guess it was nice to see her smile through the melancholy of her somewhat tender and loving breakup. We organized to trade her stuff a week later and she wanted to hug, but I refused. I told her immediately what had happened and she grabbed me like a bear, despite my protest, and said, I'm not doing this. I'm never letting go. She told me about a guy she had been getting a bit chatty with, and I said I'm not going to jeopardize that for her. We didn't immediately get back together, but we've never let go of each other since. We talked and talked and talked so much about what happened, over and over again, and the more I pushed away, the more she demanded to be let in. I'm not really sure how we ended back together. It's been about 7 months now, and at no point prior to what happened have we ever communicated so well. Loved each other so much and generally just cared about each other. I knew I loved her a lot before it happened, but now I feel like I would pass away 1,000 times just to see her smile, which is very surreal for me because I never had strong family bonds or relationships in my life. I always found it very easy to let go of things I'm attached to. Possessions, people, hobbies, etc., etc. I guess if she ever decides to hurt me now, I'm 100% at her mercy. Story 16. Obvious throwaway. My wife of 20 years started cheating on me in February of 2015. We have kids together. I was a miserable man to her in the beginning of our relationship when I was a teenager, but I thought she had let that go. So now it's 18 years later and she decides to start looking elsewhere. She's very open about it, and my only choice is to let her continue or divorce. She's gone weeks here or there without talking to the guy, most recently 5 months, and I thought they were over. I was actually thinking of reproposing to her, but then she went and did it again. Individual and couples therapy are in full swing. Therapists suggest I need to let her romance run its course and it will pass away on its own. If we didn't have kids, I'd leave her. The older people have a good idea of what's going on, and the younger ones have an amazing sense as well. Just last week, my youngest gave me a dried up dandelion and asked me to make a wish. I said, I wish that you love me forever, and she says, No, Dad, we're supposed to wish that Mommy doesn't love the stranger anymore. That broke my heart more than what my wife is doing. Story 17. My wife cheated on me with a coworker that I didn't know. It happened a year and a half ago, and now we're doing really well. Probably better than ever. I wouldn't normally recommend staying with someone who cheated on you. There's so many times that I thought I was going to end it. My wife was going through a really difficult period in her life. She was having some mental or emotional instability, and that schmuck recognized it and took advantage of her. Not saying he forced himself on her, he just really manipulated her and what she was going through. He knew exactly what he was doing. I know my wife better than anyone in the planet, and if I'd left her then, she would have completely collapsed. The guy had no real interest in her other than intimacy, and her family is kind of toxic. I loved her too much to let her ruin her own life. I refused to leave her, even as she pushed me away. I chose to wait it out with her, taking care of her daughter and making sure my wife got the help she needed. The important distinction in our scenario is that her affair was a sign of issues she was having, more than a sign of issues in our marriage. Although there were certainly problems in her marriage to work on. It took a couple of months for my wife to recover from the affair. The guilt was devastating. She had to work another year in the same company with him. It was really hard for both of us. Thankfully, they were in different departments, so they didn't see each other often. Since finding a new job, thankfully, she's been able to completely sever ties with him. She's made it clear that I am her first priority, and if there is any situation that makes me even a little bit uncomfortable, she is willing to do what is best for our marriage. She's doing really well mentally, and she's more in love with me than ever. We've since had a second daughter. The affair has made us hyper-aware of the status of her marriage, and it constantly pushes us to make sure we don't get in a rut. I'm certainly not thankful that it happened, but it has caused our marriage to be stronger than ever. Story 18. Things are pretty good. A couple of months after my boyfriend and I started dating, he cheated on me with someone he met on a school trip. He told me the next time we saw each other, if he hadn't, I never would have known. Because we were long distance then and didn't have any mutual friends. At the time, it felt like I should be a lot more upset than I was. If I'm being honest, though, it didn't bother me too much. Although I've never cheated, I've been involved with multiple people at once, so I understood the side of things. I'm sort of glad the whole thing happened. Our communication is a lot better because of it, which has made everything else easier. I still feel like I can trust him. We've lived together for about a year now, and it's been a year and a half since he cheated. We've been fighting a bit lately, but that's just because we're young, 18 and 19, and still figuring out how to manage joint finances, maintain work and life balance, and generally handle ourselves like adults. I'm glad I don't have to figure everything out on my own, though, and I feel content and secure in our relationship. I also gained what I can only call a second family through him, which has meant the world to me, as my bio family and I have a rough relationship. Overall, I'm happier than I've ever been. I don't regret staying with him in the slightest. Story 19. Not technically cheating, but cheating's second cousin. This is a long story, and I don't expect it to get any attention, but lately, writing this stuff out has been a great way for me to analyze it in a clearer fashion and come to terms with my current situation. To keep a long story short for anyone who just wants a quick answer, trust was lost and never fully recovered, catalyzing the end of a 4-year relationship. A few years ago, she met up with a polyamorous couple while acting in a musical for a local theater. She told me that they were interested in getting into some group intimacy with us, which was something I had expressed interest in from the beginning of the relationship, but we never had an opportunity to explore. I agreed to meet with them and see what's up. After a somewhat awkward dinner with them, I had a strange feeling about the arrangement that kept me up one night with anxiety. I decided to look at my girlfriend's phone to see what was really going on. And I was deeply upset with the messages the guy was sending my girlfriend and what she was saying back to him. I started hyperventilating in bed, and that woke her up, and I told her what I saw and that I really didn't like what was going on. I came to realize that basically, the other girl in the poly relationship had zero interest in either of us. And basically, all that was happening was the guy wanted to sleep with my girlfriend and she wanted to sleep with him. She was upset that I didn't trust her and went through her phone. And I was upset that my fears were validated. We had a rocky month after that, but she stopped talking to them and things went back to normal. But We had sort of opened a conversation about having a more open relationship, as I think we both realized that we wanted a little bit more intimacy than just what we could each provide for each other. I told her I would be open to her talking to and possibly sleeping with other men or women in the future as long as she was totally transparent about it, and I would have the same privilege and responsibility. A few months later, a mutual friend that I had been attracted to since before our relationship started to flirt with me. I talked about her with my girlfriend and she gave me permission to have intimacy with her. We did end up sleeping together once a little later, and that was the end of that. My girlfriend gave no signs of being upset by it, and a few months later, I proposed to her. A few months later, she goes out with that same mutual friend and another female friend, and later that night brings both of them home with her, and we had a in which they mostly interacted with just her, and I got to watch and engage in some light petting, which was nice, I guess. Afterwards, we were both happy with the outcome, and there were no signs that being less than monogamous was a problem in our relationship. Fast forward to about 6 months later, and she meets another woman and they share a mutual attraction. She tells me that she wants to have intimacy with her, and I give her my permission. We had a night together and it didn't bother me. Everything seemed to be fine and our wedding was still going on track. A couple of months after that, I lost my job suddenly. I applied to a few places and got turned down and became depressed. About 2 months after I lost my job, I noticed she was acting differently towards me. We agreed to postpone the wedding despite still being able to afford it. She basically told me a few days later, though, that if I didn't get my crap together fast, I was going to be a problem for us. For the second time, my anxiety caused me to look into her private communications, and I read a conversation with her best friend that took place after the ultimatum. Essentially, she talked about how she had other people just waiting for her to say she was single, and she was looking forward to everyone lining up for their turn. I confronted her on this. I was dumped the next day, July 29th of this year. I'll spare the extra details, but we went from being engaged and in a 4-year relationship to no longer speaking to each other in a span of a couple of months. And I think the trust I lost in her the first time she brought up non-monogamy was the inception of this fractured trust. So neither of us really cheated on each other, but lack of transparency on her end led to suspicion on my end. And when I acted on that suspicion, it broke whatever trust she was pretending to have for me. I'm still dealing with the end of the relationship, and it's harder some days to not think about her, but I sometimes wish I had ended things when I realized she was trying to trick me into letting her sleep with another guy under the guise of group intimacy. The lesson I learned is that trust is hard to build and easy to destroy. And I'm a jealous sort of person. An open relationship is not the sort of thing I'm cut out for. I know I made my share of mistakes, and I take responsibility for my failings in the relationship. I also know that I can't be with someone who keeps secrets and speaks poorly of me behind my back. So I've come to the conclusion that the relationship ending before the wedding was probably the best outcome. Story 20. In contrast to most other people's responses, we're still together and stronger than ever. Her cheating forced us both to critically analyze our relationship, which led me to discover I dropped the ball. Massively. Now, I'm not saying it was all my fault. I messed up and she knows it, and I certainly didn't let her off because I'm whipped, etc., but given the circumstances surrounding it, I couldn't let her shoulder all the blame. She's not from the UK and her mom fell critically ill. I should note that my wife and her mother have an incredibly close relationship. They're like best friends. She naturally flew immediately back home to her mother's bedside, and I, stupidly, prioritized my work rather than doing what I should have and being a supportive husband. One thing led to another, and my wife simply took comfort from one of her friends out there, and, well, things happened. Was I mad? Hell yes. But we have worked through our problems, and honestly, things couldn't be better. Now, 4 years later, the trust is back where it used to be, and it's well and truly in the past. Cheating isn't always a relationship ender, and it's not always an indication it will happen again. Just to add, though, for a bit of sweet closure, I did meet the guy it happened with when we both went to visit her family on a holiday, purely by chance. He got exactly what he deserved for sleeping with my wife, and it wasn't pretty. Felt great. Story 21. I am the significant other who cheated emotionally. It would have been physical if given the chance. This other person in my life made me extremely happy, and I fell head over heels during a very difficult time. We lived in different states, though an opportunity arose that we could see each other in the month of January 2015. I was considering it. I was ready to pack up my things and go. Fortunately, I broke down and told my significant other after feeling so guilty over the thought of having intimacy with someone else. I was so conflicted. I explained I had to know if this other person was really someone I thought was for me or if my mind was playing tricks. In the end, after much consideration with back and forth, I decided against it. I'm not going to lie and say that I was happy with my decision at the time. I wanted to be with this other person so bad, even if for a short amount of time, just so I could have been part of their day at the time and vice versa. I wanted that memory. I was selfish. It took my significant other some time to get over it. Some days were great, while others resulted in us fighting. I would say it took us until about summertime to get back to ourselves. I am so happy now that I made the decision that I did today, though. It would have ended very ugly otherwise. I would have broken the person I love with every fiber of my being because I was a scared, lonely person who sought comfort in someone else. I am extremely grateful to have been given another chance. I'll always do my best to prove to my significant other that it wasn't a mistake to have given me one. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.